Hey everybody, James back here with another video, otherwise known as the Skate Punk Lefty. Today we're going to talk about something again, and ironically enough I said it'll be funny. I guess it'll be kind of funny because we're talking about Prageru. We're going to be doing Prageru's video about the neo-Nazi Charlottesville Unite the Right rally, which was definitely a explicit neo-Nazi rallies. They shouted slogans from the far right. They had made, comments, anti-Semitic comments and, things about gays, Jews. They, beat up a bunch of people, killed a person, and the only people that stood up to them were the socialists. And before we begin the PragerU video, which is only 5 minutes, one question. Oh yeah, this Sean video dissecting the shit is pretty good too. But one thing that I want to do before we get this video started is to talk about how in the hell could such a thing happen? We live, if not at any other time, one of the most free, democratic times in human history. We've seen Nazism before, and we've seen it be relegated to the ashes of time. I'm not trying to sound like an anime character, but I'm just saying, it's one hard to imagine that in modern America that there can be people that are this hateful. This seems like a meme. This low key seemed like some stuff from from how I want to say I gotta put this shit from the 1940s, 50s, or 60s or something, or 1930s, 1920s America. And we ask ourselves, how didn't we not see this coming? I think one of the biggest factors is the fact that Trump was working with Steve Bannon to promote right wing politics online to disaffected people. And it also became noted that, lately in history, there's been a lot more money in promoting far right and right wing politics than promoting, liberalism or progressivism or even intermediate conservatism. I grew up, in the late 90s and 2000s, 28 years old. And I remember, thinking about things like this as being like something from hell, something from the past that you would never see in modern day America. And I really wish that the people that were responsible for, this event, responsible by my metric, that is, I guess, could be held to some sort of account. But we all know that would never happen. It's hard to imagine, or how we've seen the influx of far right politics into the regular America talking sphere. And ironically enough, very few left wing talking points. That's because right wing talking points don't threaten the status quo, they reinforce hierarchies. Left wing politics and populism seeks to alleviate those grievances among the working class population. And, rich people don't want that. And it's such a huge story, through Gamergate, through, the resurgence of the white supremacist movement out loud. And I remember my time as a liberal at this point. I was not a socialist like, I am today, or, anarcho-communist, whatever you want to call me, but from my politics. I don't really like to label myself. I just like to say I'm generally just far left. But anyway, and at this time period, I was kind of a dumb liberal at this time because I'm like, there's no way white supremacists and neo Nazis can exist in America because we just had a black president. Boy, was I so fucking green. And it's like watching, I guess day by day, especially as a young black male, as the far right gained more and more ground as the quote unquote president, repeated their talking points, and they gained more and more influence in a lot of spaces online, especially the quote unquote nerd and alternative culture communities. It started to, really show America has a lot of motherfucking work to do. And, it was hard to imagine that something like this could happen. Then you had all the apologists online too, Shapiro. Walsh wasn't around at the time, but Dave Rubin. Let's see who else was around. I don't think Tim Pool was doing his shit that he doing now, but all I know is that a lot of content creators like fucking mysterious Mr. Enter. Like, man, a lot of like content creators were just far right, shitting on progressivism, shitting on liberal values, not liberalism itself, but like liberal values, and they winded up, amazing atheists, Sean Head, all these people, Chris Reagan at the time. At least he came out and apologized. Sean Head kind of did, but it seems like to me that she really hasn't learned her lesson about flirting with far right politics. But anyways, is that is that a lot of these people shout on progressivism and inadvertently promoted far right politics to a mass amount of people and made leftists look like either a genocide denying murderers who defend people like Mao or Stalin, or b people who are like blue haired, you better say my gender right or don't men spread type people. So a lot of people turned their political animus against the left wing political thought. Not to say things have gotten better today, but that time period was a hell of a time period. And I think during this time, of course, I think this is when I officially started to call myself a quote unquote leftist and a person of the far left, is because one thing I will say is that at this rally, despite everything that happened, the only people that went out there and put themselves on the line to stand up against these people were the far left. The so-called conservatives defended them and made excuses for them, while at least liberals hand waved them, and the left actually went out there and physically stood up to them. But I guess what we're gonna do, we're gonna dive into this Prageru video, because I can talk about the build up to something like this all day, just like the amount of the normalization of hatred on the internet was astounding. And this was before I hate to say people name. I'm trying not to associate my account with other people, but Xander Hall, Vosh, Demon Mama, fucking Shark 30, or any of these other people that or even people like Second Thought and stuff like that, did not exist at this time on the internet in the same way that they did today. So there was nobody to really challenge far right populism on YouTube or any other platform. So they wound up, getting the how can I say, just getting the advantage. But without further ado, let's get started.
Politicians lie. We all know that. This is not an indictment of all politicians. It's simply part of the game. It's our job.
But it really shouldn't be, though. Really, should it be? It's a part of the game, but it, I know I've said something, but it really shouldn't be. Politicians should be always incentivized to tell the truth and nothing but the truth. But unfortunately, our government is so backed up through the asshole by people that profit off things like climate change denial, racial division, police militarization, supporting Israel, etc., that politicians regularly have to lie to defend their interests. It's like the time when Nancy Pelosi said that Joe Biden couldn't relieve student loan debt.
As informed citizens to figure out the truth. And that's where journalists and the media come in. They are supposed to help us ferret out fact from fiction. So when they get a fact wrong, that's bad. When they get a fact wrong, know it's wrong, and don't correct it, that's worse. That's not.
So why does if y'all think that's really bad, how the fuck does Prageru even exist? Because, don't get me wrong, I just pulled out an example of a liberal line, but Republicans constantly lie, and they don't stop lying about every little fucking thing in society. Whether we're talking about employment percentage, welfare program, the influx of immigrants, or, the price of gas, it's like Republicans lie constantly about every fucking subject. And it's like, I would respect our so-called American conservatives, our American pretty much fascists, and yes, that includes the black ones like Ben Carson and Tim Scott. I would respect N. James Craig. I would respect them a lot more if they didn't constantly lie about every little fucking thing, because Democrats lie on and off, and it's like a little irritating. It's fundamentally disgusting that they do it, but it's just like, I'm a little irritating. But Republicans lie about devastating, undeniable shit. And yes, here's my
not getting a fact wrong, that's a lie. And that's journalistic malfeasance. The best, or maybe worst, example of this followed a presidential press conference at Trump Tower on Tuesday, August 15th, 2017. You remember what happened that previous weekend. A group of white supremacists held a white pride rally in Charlottesville, Virginia. The ostensible reason was to protest the removal of a statue of Confederate General Robert E. Lee.
Like, fucking literally, dude. They were trying to defend a... And it's like there's no reason or right for people to defend this statue. I remember I've seen some debates in the past and shit like that where people try to say that we should keep these statues up, and they try to make all type of lame-ass justifications to keep them up. Let me tell you something. History is in books. History is all online on the internet. You want to read about somebody, even the most terrible fucking people throughout history, the most vile human rights abuses and shit, they're just a Google search away. We do not need statues of traitors, of white supremacists to, quote unquote, preserve history. Now, if you want a statue of this bastard Robert E. Lee in like a museum or something like that, okay, fine. But what we do not need is statues of him all over the American South or the American North, not many up here, so that people, because like these statues were literally made in like 1940, 50, and 60, especially 1960 during the civil rights movement. So that way, the black people that were marching for their civil rights, and I guess you can say associated groups like immigrants, women, and gay people, will feel intimidated by a man that fought to preserve so-called white supremacist ideals over everybody else. So no, these statues have no reason to fucking be up at all, because they exist to intimidate and remind people of the oppression that their ancestors suffered, and it seeks to galvanize white supremacy in people with those hateful beliefs.
An Antifa group showed up to counter-protest. The mayor and the police were totally unprepared to deal with the...
This is war. That's what they said. This is war. This like false fucking equivalency. I can fucking guarantee you that the quote unquote Antifa group didn't have a sign that said this is war. Like, I've never seen that shit before. I've been to plenty of protests. Never a counter protest like this. But Antifa does not carry flags and banners talking about beating up, killing people, or raging fucking war. This is just Prageru's attempt to equivocate the far left, or the far left, and I'm sure it was even some liberals in there, with the people, with neo-Nazis and white supremacists. They try to do this, oh, we're moderate conservatives, we're not white supremacists. Now, here's a video about this bitch Heather McDonald telling you about black crime.
The violence that ensued. Tragically, a young woman, Heather Heyer, was run over and killed by a neo-Nazi.
Funnily enough, people like Sargon of Akkad, fucking no bullshit, and I think what's that son of a bitch, I hypocrite were saying that this woman died from a heart attack, and they were trying to say that she was like overweight. A disgusting, like, callous disregard for human life. Like, this woman literally died. She got killed for no reason, because the people that were marching were like marching away from the people, and a Grey Dodge Challenger slammed into hundreds of fucking people. This dude's gonna be in prison for the rest of his fucking life. His name, I will never forget it, James Alex Fields. Unfortunately, we share the same first name, but he like this, there was no excuse for this shit, and it's hard to see that. Well, at least Prageru's not doing it, but the online right and far right were kind of making excuses for this shit. Kind of.
The press conference itself was raucous. The media was antagonistic. The president was combative. Out of it all, one phrase...
Because only thing that Trump had to do is what you're doing here, or what Ronald Reagan did, or what George W. Bush did, or what's the bastard Richard Nixon did. Just be like, we condemn white supremacy. They're not welcome here. Republicans emptily say, we don't really want white supremacists here, Like Ron DeSantis did a few days ago at after that neo-Nazi terrorist attack, the one that targeted the black people. He's just like, we don't really want these kind of people with these views in our city. And that's all Trump had to do, or well, rather, since he's a president, we don't want people with neo-Nazi views in our city. We don't need. That would have lasted him probably the whole presidency, but he could not do it. He had to do what y'all did a few seconds ago. The "this is war" sign shit, where y'all trying to equivocate the far right with the far left.
Eclipsed the thousands of words exchanged. The media reported that President Trump described neo-Nazis as very fine people.
He said that. What do you want us to fucking do? It's recorded video footage that he said that there are some very fine people on both sides. Because literally at this rally, if you were not a leftist or a liberal and you were a right-wing Republican, you were in tandem with the Nazis. The Nazis at this time were acting as a militia unit to the less far right people, and even probably talking to them and indoctrinating them to become more radically far right. Even though not reported, I've done watched a bunch of shit from like ProPublica about the Charlottesville neo-Nazi rally. You should check out Frontlines, Charlottesville video sometimes. I listened to it a long time ago when I was working and shit like that. Gets me through the day. But anyways, it's like the one thing I think that's not reported. Let me turn the mic closer to me on this shit. Is that how many people you think were further indoctrinated into further far right beliefs because they attended this rally? So these people share a direct ideological association with another. There's no such thing as it being very fine people on both sides.
Only he didn't.
Yes, he
In
did.
fact,
Dude, are you fucking kidding me, dude? Are you fucking serious? And the only time where he backpedaled on the shit that he was saying was when he was called out by people like Mitt Romney and them, when they said this is evil and we must call it by its name. He would not fucking do it. It took him like an extra 4 or 5 fucking days to actually call out the fucking Nazis. He said that. What the fuck do y'all want us to do? Y'all want to know what you should do instead of trying to deny shit that Trump said? Maybe you should tell him, go, like, look, Dennis Prager, get your fat ass up and get a meeting with Trump, because you hate black people and Jews too, ironically enough, being Jewish. Tell your butt buddy to shut the fuck up. Because Trump gets in trouble for shit that he says, but nobody is making him say it. And then when he says something stupid or vile, and then people come out like, oh, like Trump said X or Y thing. Like, no, he really didn't say. Yes, he really did say.
He didn't even hint at it.
Yes, he did.
Just the opposite.
Dude.
He condemned the neo-Nazis
Barely.
in no uncertain terms.
Sure.
So then, who were the fine people he mentioned?
Could it be?
The answer? He was referring to another group of Charlottesville demonstrators who came out that...
There were 3 groups of people out there. No, this is a literal fucking rewriting of history, dude. If we want to talk about people that were peaceful protesters and shit, first of all, there were no far right peaceful protesters out there. Every single motherfucker that was like associated with the Make America Great Again shit, that includes that bastard Enrico Tarrio took his black ass there, and he was representing the Proud Boys and what have you. Oh man. Is that these people were harassing and attacking people who were counter-protesting them. There was not 4 groups of people who were saying like, okay, there were some people here to fight, on the left, and there's some people to fight on the right, and there's people protesting to leave, and it's like, no, what the fuck are you talking about? No. Every instance of violence was instigated by the far right at this rally. There's way too many videos, man. Them, because it's like you would notice, bro, from the Charlottesville neo-Nazi rally that there's no right-wing reports of somebody getting assaulted or battered or some shit like that. The most you have is during the beating of this dude named DeAndre Harris. A fucking Nazi tried to say that the kid assaulted him or some shit like that because he grabbed the board when they were trying to beat him to fucking death. Other than that shit, you have no cases of right-wing people having injuries or getting beaten or none of that other shit. Because people were still, ironically at this time, I will say to the left, did get a little more abrasive. But at this time, they were trying to still reason with these people. But these people weren't there for reasoning. They were there to beat the shit out of people.
that weekend. Protesters who wanted the Robert E. Lee statue removed, and protesters who wanted to keep the statue and restore.
What type of good, very fine person would want to keep a icon of Confederate memorabilia, a icon of American white supremacy? How the fuck can you justify saying that's a very fine fucking person?
Restore the park's original name. This is what President Trump said about those peaceful protesters. You also had some very fine people on both sides.
What happened? I thought the Republicans were anti-Confederate. What happened to all that shit? You see, it's like, especially like black conservatives, they love, bro. It makes them fucking jizz themselves all the fucking time. The Democrats founded the KKK, but now we got a Republican president defending a Confederate statue. Figure that one out.
You had people in that group that were there to protest the taking down of, to them, a very, very important statue, and the renaming of a park from Robert E. Lee to another name. A few moments later, in case there would be any misunderstanding, he makes his meaning even more explicit. I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists. They should be condemned totally. Lest you have any doubts that good people...
That later. He said that after the fact. He said that after the very fine people comment. You should say that first. And then at the end of the fucking day, it doesn't matter if you got a bunch of dipshits up here trying to keep a statue of Confederate memorabilia for a white supremacist who fought to preserve slavery, and you're supposed to be a so-called Republican who's so anti-racist that you don't want to give people welfare and all that other shit. You should have said, fuck it, take the statue down, I don't care. But no, he couldn't do that. He couldn't do it.
People were in Charlottesville.
And if anything, the only thing making quote-unquote four sides of people is doing is it's creating a narrative of false equivalency for Trump to hide behind.
To protest the removal of the Robert E. Lee statue. Anyway. The New York Times confirmed it in a story they published the next day, August 16th. Good people can go to Charlottesville, said Michelle Percy, a night shift worker at a Wichita, Kansas retirement home who drove all night with a conservative group that opposed the planned removal of a statue of the Confederate General Robert E. Lee.
And I will also say this shit. If you are doing something, right? I don't give a fuck what it is. Let's say you're going to GameStop, right? Yeah, you're going to GameStop, right? And you're about to get a new video game, right? And you don't know nothing else about it. And then when you get to GameStop, there's a bunch of Nazis standing outside trying to buy the same game as you. You should take your ass home. Because that means there's something that you are doing that is benefiting these people. And it's time for you to do that thing I say a lot, to do self-introspection about the things that you believe and your values. Because I've never done that before. I never had this problem where I had to fucking write into the New York Times like, oh, I went to this place with this left-wing group and we did some stuff and but there's good leftists. I have never had to fucking do that, and nor has any liberal politician nor has any left-wing group ever had to fucking frame the shit like that, like we weren't all fascists and white supremacists, just some of those people were fascist, but even though I was defending an icon of white supremacy, I'm somehow not a white supremacist. Oh man, I just gave myself a fucking I just gave myself a fucking brain fart, dude. That was so stupid. Why did I say that?
After listening to Mr. Trump on Tuesday, she said it was as if he had channeled her and her friends who had no interest in standing with Nazis or white.
Why were you there with them? You wouldn't have been there at all if you had no interest in standing with these people. Not to mention the fact all the promotion behind this shit. This was promoted explicitly as a white supremacist and neo-Nazi rally. Literally called Unite the Right, where they were trying to get the more intermediate Republicans, or I don't really think at this point in history, man, and I'm not even talking about 2023, we can talk 2017. At this point in history, there were no moderate Republicans. I think most Republicans by this point in time were just fascists and white supremacists. or they were vulnerable to the talking points of fascists and white supremacists thanks to all the shit that's being said to them constantly, like that bastard Tucker Carlson who got fired about how immigrants are stealing this and that, and about black crime, or trans people wanting to use the bathroom that they want to use. These people are fed, force fed all this fucking propaganda, and then eventually, you know, they get around people that are like, you know what, the inevitable conclusion to all these problems is the JQ. So no, I reject this framing that this rally was just a innocent don't remove the statue rally.
White supremacists. There's another simple test that we can employ to prove that the president was not referring to the neo-Nazis as fine people.
Try harder.
It's so obvious, it's painful to mention. The president's daughter and son-in-law are Orthodox Jews.
That doesn't mean shit in the grand scheme of things, dude. These motherfuckers right here love playing like identity politics all the motherfucking time, bro, when it comes to you know, like white supremacy nowadays. See, white supremacy, neo-Nazism, I kind of feel like in today's, not I kind of feel like, it's been shown through history that white supremacy has the ability to meld and warp itself into forms that we would not have perceived at a different point of time in history. Not all white supremacists are white, is what I'm really just saying here. Some white supremacists are Jewish. Some white supremacists are black. Some white supremacists can be Latino, you know, Hispanic American, or just Hispanic descent in general. There's Asian white supremacists. White supremacy and fascism is not an exclusively you have to be white European type thing. It comes in many different forms through many different kinds of people. And to just say like, oh, what do you mean like white supremacy? I'm Jewish. That's like when Ben Shapiro says that shit, like, I'm not a white supremacist, I'm a Jew. Now let me talk to you about black crime and talk about deep states. Like, come on, dude. And third branches of government.
Grandchildren
and defend
are
Alex
Jewish.
Jones.
And if that's still not enough to convince you, how about this? Does anyone believe that Donald Trump thinks they're a good Antifa? The leftist thugs who were counter-protesting the neo-Nazi thugs?
What
After all,
this false fucking equivalency, bro. And it's like, it's a goddamn shame. And ironically, you want to know something? This type of framing where people try to say like some, oh, they're Antifa thugs and the neo-Nazi thug. Like, no. There's neo-Nazi thugs and people standing up against them and fighting their community. People flew in from about 7 or 8 states to come, you know, demonstrate their hatred and to beat people up. It was literally people there that were just like photojournalists, and because they were like looked a little too gay, guess what happened to them? So no, like I said, I don't appreciate this framing where this person's trying to say like, oh, you know, the thugs on both sides. Like, no, there's only neo-Nazi thugs. And while we're at it, dude, why the fuck do we keep like this equivalency of like left-wing thuggetry, quote unquote, and right-wing thuggetry? Because like the most left-wing people would do is protest and feed the homeless in your neighborhood, or give somebody a place to live when they don't got nowhere else to fucking go. But what right-wing people do, and it's like, it's underplayed by so many people, and you wanna know who does it the fucking worst? Is that son of a bitch Tim Pool. Tim Pool downplays it the worst, because Nazis and white supremacists do, when you know, people like Rob Noor do it, people like you know, I guess Shapiro and the rest of the guys themselves, there's some, oh, these right-wing innocent protesters, they're just demonstrating their views. You cannot beat people up for demonstrating their views when there's a long history, especially if I'm not even like pre-Nazi Germany and post-Nazi Germany, of like actual like murders, harassment, and you know, kidnappings and rapes, and you know, of all types of people. And I'm not even just talking about black people, gay people, Jewish people, you know, even white women that were like non-gender conforming, or that they perceive were feminist, or you know, quote unquote lesbian, whatever, were, you know, kidnapped, beaten, and like all type of shit happened. Harassment of interracial couples, leading to stabbings and all type of shit. When Nazis visit a place, they don't just visit and just be like, somehow we're Nazis. We hate the N words, we hate the Jews or the K slurs, and we hate the F slurs, and we're gonna leave now. See ya, bye. No, they do things, terrible fucking things.
If those two groups were the only ones involved, and there were fine people on both sides, that means the president believed that there were fine Antifa people. Even MSNBC should have found that.
The finest people, the only people there that were like actually trying to do some good. Keep in mind that, these so-called Antifa people, whoever those people are, I don't know. But like, anyway, so, for real, they were protecting their community from fascists who came in to fight and, brutalize people and, and like vandalize the community. So, and it's like so many people march with the liberty. Even like clergymen from the churches and stuff came out against these people. But guess what? They did all the shit that they did anyway.
That hard to swallow. Again, the very fine people on both sides President Trump described at the press conference were the people who wanted to remove the Robert E. Lee statue and the people who wanted to keep it. Both of these groups were nonviolent protesters, fine people with very different ideological views. The scandal of Charlottesville is not what President Trump said about neo-Nazis. It's what the media said President Trump said about neo-Nazis.
No, it's about what he said about the neo-Nazis. He called them very fine people on both sides. When you have a side that includes Nazis and a side that people are fighting them, and you say very fine people on both sides, you build a false equivalency that implicitly implies that you're defending Nazis.
It's a scandal because news reporting is supposed to be about gathering facts, not promoting an agenda.
Oh boy.
In Charlottesville, they got it exactly backwards. We have been living with the consequence.
What agenda is being promoted? Like what the fuck does that mean? Like the anti-Nazi agenda, the anti-fascist agenda, the agenda of like not allowing, and just like reporters using their power, their voice to, voice out their concerns about America becoming a white supremacist hellhole thanks to an incompetent president. Living with the consequences of what?
Consequences ever since. Plainly put, ABC, CBS, NBC, NPR, the New York Times, the Washington.
These motherfuckers just said NPR lie. I've never seen like all these other news organizations and shit, and I guess you can say a few times. I've never, and it's like as a left-wing person, I'm mistrustful of media, especially liberal media like ABC, CBS, and New York Times, Washington Post, and all that shit, because they defend capitalism and they say shit like why student loan debt is bad for you and you should not get that Starbucks this morning. They say shit like that. But NPR, no, I don't believe that they are quote unquote these liars that you're saying that they are.
Washington Post and the others spread a malicious lie that has poisoned our national dialogue. They should apologize to the American people for what they have.
Or you can tell your president to shut the fuck up.
Done. Don't hold your breath. Actually, I have a better idea.
You stink, nigga. So I probably have to.
Let out a big sigh of relief, because now you know the truth. I'm Steve Cortez, CNN political commentator and columnist for Real Clear Politics for Prageru University.
We fucking ridiculous, bro. Like, I really like, and I was thinking of a closing statement about this whole thing, but there's nothing what I could really say. Like, we literally listened to a guy try to defend Trump, had his dick all in his mouth, trying to pretend like he didn't say the things that he said about Charlottesville, and also try to build a false equivalency about the things that happened at Charlottesville. That's conservatism for you. Alright, I'm out.